Hello there, and welcome to episode 7 of a Northener in Cornwall in search of King Arthur and a decent pint of bitter. And what a week it's been. Now, first of all, this was supposed to be it. The big one. The jewel in Cornwall's cultural crown. Weeks and weeks of rehearsals, arguments, smoke machine mishaps, tight-related trauma, all leading up to opening night of Jack and the Beanstalk. And the entire village was buzzing like it was the West End. Except it's not the West End, is it? It's a drafty village hall that smells faintly of damp and leftover buffet. Sebastian, our self-appointed director / visionary, was strutting about like he was about to unveil Hamlet at the National Theatre. Every time he spoke, he was using words like gravitas and pace and resonance. And I was using words like, why me? And does anyone know how to get out of this costume without dislocating my hip? Tracy, of course, was beside herself with excitement. I mean, she'd already invited half of Cornwall, plus people from Wigan via Facebook. Oh, you'll be marvellous, Paul, she said, patting me on the arm like a condemned man on the way to the gallows. Marvellous? I'm in tights, love, not Les Mis. The villagers were treating it like an actual West End premiere. Gwen had a new hat specifically for the occasion, a pirate tricorn with a feather so long it nearly decapitated a seagull outside the co-op. Colin the farmer, well, he'd promised to bring real hay bales for the set. Real hay bales. Indoors. What could possibly go wrong? And Nigel and Brian, the panto horse, well, they were spotted practising outside the hall, trotting up and down the high street and narrowly avoiding a bus. It was like the horse whisper meets casualty. And as for me, well, I was dreading it. Not the acting. No, not the audience. The costume. Folks, I have to wear tights that are so tight I can't tell if I'm Baron up or a badly wrapped sausage. Then there's the feathered hat, which Tracy said makes me look dashing. Dashing? I look like a pigeon attending a fancy dress funeral. Oh, and the boots. Oh, God, the boots. Right, they squeaked with every step. So instead of like a powerful stage presence, I sounded like a mouse on laminate flooring. Oh, aye, very intimidating. But no, Sebastian, well, he wasn't worried about squeaky boots. He was worried about lighting cues. I mean, he kept demanding mood and shadow from Trevor, the bloke who runs the lights. Now, Trevor is a retired electrician whose idea of subtle lighting is flicking the switch and hoping for the best. I mean, if there's mood and shadow, it's usually because the bulb's blown. Then we had the hall transformed. Well, at least that was the plan. I mean, the front row of chairs had been borrowed from the church. Mismatched, creaky, and one with a suspicious wobble that I predict will end with someone going to A&E. I mean, the stage curtains had been ironed by Mavis, except she'd accidentally ironed one shut, together. It took us half an hour to peel it apart like stuck wallpaper. And then there was the Beanstalk, our pièce de résistance. That stood centre stage, 10 feet of papier-mâché, wobbling precariously like a drunk at closing time. And every time someone walked past, it leaned just slightly, like it was considering ending it all. And the programme, oh yes, we had a programme. Yeah, they printed programmes. Glossy, folded, and complete with cast photos. Mine was taken mid-blink, so I look less like Baron up and more like someone who just sat on a drawing pin. Meanwhile, Gwen's photo had her brandishing her pirate hat like she's leading a coup. And Sebastian, oh, well, his photo, it was an actual headshot from the 1980s. So black and white, brooding, turtleneck. It looked like he was auditioning for Bergerac. You get the picture. And as for the audience, oh, they were well hyped. I mean, you'd think Andrew Lloyd Webber himself was turning up. I mean, people were whispering, "Have you got tickets? They've nearly sold out." Sold out? It's a free panto in a village hall. Half the audience only turned up because they thought there'd be free passes at the interval. So yes, folks, the stage was set. Excitement in the air. Sequins sparkling, tights clinging for dear life. And I was in the wings, just about to stride out on stage. Feather bobbing, boots squeaking, dignity hanging by a thread. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turned out, everything. So, if you've ever wondered how a panto collapses before the curtain even goes up, let me just paint you a picture, right? It started, as things often do, with Colin the farmer. Now, he insisted that the show, would feel authentic using real hay bales on stage. Fine. Charming rustic touch, bit of straw here and there. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Well, turns out hay is highly flammable, and it attracts every sneezy villager within a 3-mile radius, and surprise, surprise, makes an excellent nesting ground for a family of mice. So during the final lighting test, Trevor turns on the stage lamps and whoosh, the hay starts smouldering like it's auditioning for Backdraft. Nothing says family panto quite like a spontaneous barn fire. Sebastian, naturally, tried to style it out. "Oh, keep going, it's atmosphere, darling, atmosphere." Atmosphere? I thought we were doing Jack and the Beanstalk, not Terror and Inferno. Gwen's feather caught an ember and suddenly she looked less like a fairy godmother and more like a Catherine wheel. I mean, Tracy had to beat her at with a rolled-up programme. Try and put her out. Audience hasn't even sat down yet, and already we're on one health and safety violation away from being on news at 10. Oh, but that wasn't the end. Oh, no. Derek, the ex-mechanic, he decided this was the perfect time to demonstrate his realistic creaking tree sound effect. Except instead of a creak, it sounded like a ship sinking. I mean, he got carried away. Started throwing in chains and foghorns. Honestly, if you close your eyes, you'd have thought you were in the middle of the Titanic. Not a Cornish village hall. Half the cast looked seasick. Then came, again, the pièce de résistance, the Beanstalk. The star of the show, really. Our mighty papier-mâché marvel. 10 feet tall, painted green, held together with Pritt stick and optimism. See, Sebastian had this grand vision, right? Jack climbs it, the lights dim, dry ice swirls, angels weep with joy. What actually happened? Well, during Maggie's whispered opening monologue, "Fee, fi, fo, fum," delivered at library volume, the Beanstalk gave a sort of weary sigh and collapsed like a pensioner after a Zumba class. Straight down onto Nigel and Brian, the panto horse. Squashed them flat. I mean, one minute you had 2 men in a horse costume, and the next you had something resembling roadkill in sequins. And here's the kicker, right? The audience thought it was deliberate. Yeah, they roared with laughter. Thought it was like slapstick genius. I mean, one poor bloke laughed so hard, he spilt his flask of Bovril all over his wife's lap. She didn't see the funny side. She smacked him with her handbag so hard his glasses went into the orchestra pit, which, by the way, was just Trevor with a kazoo. Now at this point, Patricia, the retired nurse, leapt into action. Forget the play, she was doing triage. Are you hydrated? Are you breathing properly? I mean, she had Nigel, the horse's back legs, on the floor doing star jumps to improve circulation, while Brian, the front half, lay groaning, still wearing the horse's head. I mean, the whole scene looked like a veterinary horror film directed by Quentin Tarantino. And Sebastian? Well, Sebastian was still shouting, "The show must go on." No, Sebastian, it mustn't. The stage smelled of smoke, the beanstalk was in bits, half the cast were in tears, and I was standing there in squeaky boots looking like a knock-off Robin Hood. If that's theatre, then I'm Lawrence bloody Olivier. Anyway, finally, the village hall caretaker came storming in. Ivor's vest, mop in his hand, eyes bulging. "That's it. Hall's closed. You're a danger to yourselves and others. Now get out." So that was it. Curtain down. Jack and the Beanstalk cancelled. Not with a bang. Not with a standing ovation. Cancelled because we nearly set fire to the Women's Institute's raffle table and flattened a pantomime horse. So instead of opening night glory, we ended up sat outside the hall in full costume, surrounded by smoke, hair, and the faint smell of singed feathers. Tracy tried to console me. "Don't worry, Paul. It'll make a funny story one day." "Oh, aye, hilarious. Nothing says dignity like sitting in tights on a wet curb while your director argues with a caretaker over scorch marks on the laminate flooring." So there you have it. Cornwall's shortest lived panto. Jack never climbed the beanstalk, the giant never roared, and Baron Hardup, me, never delivered his big line. A tragedy? Perhaps. A relief? Oh, aye, absolutely. So, it's an hour after the great Beanstalk collapse of 2025, and the entire cast of Jack and the Beanstalk is huddled in the snug of the Miner's Arms. You know, if Shakespeare had ever written a farce about wet hair and singed fairies, this would have been the after party. Now, I just settled with a pint of tribute when the finger pointing began. Colin the farmer was first up. "If you'd all listened to me," he boomed, slamming his pint down like it was a gavel, we'd have had a real cow on stage instead of that silly pantomime horse. A cow would panic when a beanstalk fell on it." Yes, Colin. Nothing says family entertainment like a full-grown dairy cow doing a pirouette next to Widder Twankey. Sebastian, of course, puffed up like a peacock. "Darlings, it wasn't my vision that failed. My vision was magnificent. It was the execution that let us down." Oof. To which Gwen, still smelling fell in a barbecue chicken, snapped, "Execution's about right, love. I nearly executed myself with my wings caught fire." The whole pub cheered. You don't mess with Gwen, especially when her eyebrows are still smoking. Patricia, the retired nurse, she'd commandeered the fruit machine corner as her clinic. She was checking pulses between rounds. "Paul, drink some water. Alcohol dehydrates the vocal cords." "Yes, Patricia, because vocal cord hydration is top of my list when I've just survived a papier-mâché landslide." Meanwhile, Clive the postman was doing what Clive always does, rhyming everything. "I blame the hay. It went astray. It ruined the play in a terrible way." The locals at the bar started heckling him with rhymes of their own. I mean, one fella shouted, "You're a prat, and that's that." And nearly brought the house down more than bloody Beanstalk did. Then Derek, bless him, insisted the real issue was the sound design. If my creaking tree had been given centre stage, the Beanstalk wouldn't have sounded so weak. It's about acoustics, Paul. Acoustics? The man's entire contribution was making creak noises into a microphone that he bought from Maplin in 1997. And Helen was there, the drama student. She was sulking in the corner, arms folded, scarf looped 57 times round the neck. "I can't work in these conditions. It's all so unprofessional." Unprofessional? Helen, you're in a Cornish village hall pantomime with a postman who rhymes his dialogue. It's not RADA. And just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, Nigel and Brian, the panto horse, finally staggered in, still half in costume. Nigel, the back end, was limping like he'd gone 3 rounds with Mike Tyson, while Brian still had the horse's head on because he said, "The strap's jammed. I can't get it off." So there he was, sat at the bar, sipping a pint through a horse's mouthpiece that's some sort of equestrian Darth Vader. Of course, once the horse entered the pub, all hell broke loose. Colin shouted, "See? Should have been a cow." Gwen rolled her eyes and muttered something about glue factories. And Tracy, well, Tracy just gave me that look. You know the one? The "why do I put up with you, Paul" look. It's a mixture of pity, amusement and mild rage. It's like watching someone try to parallel park a caravan. Don't know why she thought it was my fault. Anyway, eventually Sebastian stood on a chair, raised his half-empty glass and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, we shall rebuild. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, our Jack and the Beanstalk will live again." At which point, the caretaker of the hall, who'd clearly followed us to the pub for dramatic effect, bellowed from the doorway, "Over my dead body. That hole's shut for a month while I get rid of the scorch marks, and you lot, you're banned." And that, folks, was the final nail. Panto dreams dead. Village hall closed. Cast morale somewhere between tragic and tipsy. And me, well, I was sat there in tights with a pint sandwiched between a rhyming postman and a man still trapped inside a horse costume thinking, you don't get this on Broadway, do you? Tracy summed it up best, I think, as always. She took one sip of her gin, sighed and said, "Well, Paul, at least you didn't forget your lines." Which, frankly, was the kindest thing anyone had said to me all night. So after the death of Jack and the Beanstalk, may it rest in peace, literally, Tracy decided we needed a new cultural outlet, something uplifting, something musical, something less likely to end in hayfires and traumatised livestock. So she signed us up for the Launceston Pop Choir. Now, when you think of choir, you might imagine angelic voices, soaring harmonies, maybe a bit of Handel's Messiah. What we got was 20 people in an echoey church hall, all competing to see who could murder Monitor's Broken the loudest. Honestly, I've heard better noise coming out of a broken Hoover. Now, the conductor, musical director, was a chap called Lionel. He was a retired bank manager. He wore a bow tie, thought he was Simon Cowell in disguise. Anyway, he tapped his baton on the lectern like he was about to conduct the London Philharmonic. Now, in reality, he was trying to stop Gwen belting out the descant from Jerusalem at full volume when we were meant to be humming. Now, Gwen, bless her, thinks she's Cornish Pavarotti. Truth is, she's more Cornish Foghorn, but I wouldn't tell her that. Tracy, of course, blended in beautifully. She's got a lovely soprano voice, perfectly in tune. And me, well, I got shoved into the baritone section alongside Derek, the ex-mechanic, who still hasn't quite worked out that humming in harmony doesn't mean doing engine noises. Honestly, during the warm-up, he sounded like a Ford Escort with a dodgy exhaust. Patricia was there, the ever-dutiful nurse who insisted on checking everyone's breathing technique. Deep breaths, Paul, from the diaphragm. She stuck her hand just above my stomach. I'm like, wait, that's as far as you go, love. Which was a bold move in itself, really, because, I just had beans on toast before we came here. Anyway, Clyde the postman, naturally only sings in rhyme. So Lionel says, "Right, baritones, let's go from bar 16. So Clyde pipes up, "I'll sing bar 16, if you know what I mean." Not only is it infuriating, it's infectious. Because the whole back row ended up chanting, bar 16, rhyming's our routine." Lionel nearly combusted on the spot. And Helen was there. I don't know why, but she came to me and she said, "Paul, when you sing," and she was like leaning over to me like she was telling me something top secret, "you need to feel the music. Live the music. Become the music." I said, Right, all right, Helen. It's a community choir. Not wicked. No one storming the barricades in Launceston tonight. Oh, that was Les Mis, wasn't it? Yeah, Les Mis, wicked. Anyway, it was all the same. It was all a bit of a mix-up. And then the moment of truth. Lionel announced we'd be tackling Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, I love Queen, always have done. But this was like listening to a goose strangling Freddie Mercury. Derek tried to do the guitar solo on his kazoo. Gwen sang Galileo so high the stained glass windows rattled. Colin the farmer interrupted halfway through with, "Did you know goats can actually recognise pitch?" "No, Colin, but I can recognise when something's off key, and it's you." And me, well, I gave it my best shot. I came in on the let him go bit about 5 bars too early. Bellowed it across the hall. Tracy gave me a loot that could have curdled clotted cream. Lionel stopped the whole choir, sighed, looked at me and said, "Paul, please, just mime next time." I'm like, I've officially been demoted to mime artist in a choir. Afterwards we had tea and biscuits. Patricia told me I was slightly dehydrated. Again. Derek tried to harmonise with the whistle of the kettle. Clive rhymed digested with festive 17 times. And Gwen, well, she starts a petition to do a solo at the Christmas concert. I mean, if that happens, I'll be selling earplugs at the door. And Tracy, bless her, well, she was all smiles on the way home. "Oh, that was fun, wasn't it, Paul?" And I thought, well, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, fun like dental surgery. But at least no one caught fire. You know, no one fell off a beanstalk. And the only casualty was Freddie Mercury's legacy. So, you know, maybe that's progress. So the following day, Tracy decides, after my triumphant career as Cornwall's only mime artist in a choir, that we do need something more cultural. And where do we end up? The Eden Project. Now, for those of you who don't know, it's basically 2 massive greenhouses on steroids. Giant domes full of plants. Imagine a science fiction film where they're trying to rebuild Earth after an apocalypse. Except instead of astronauts, it's middle-class people in sandals eating falafel wraps. Now, I will admit, right, it's impressive. You know, when you first walk in, you think, wow, mankind has achieved something incredible here. And then 10 minutes later, you're sweating like a rotisserie chicken and wondering why you paid £30 to stand in what feels like a tropical car wash. I mean, Tracy was loving it. "Oh, Paul, isn't it marvellous? I mean, look at that palm tree." Meanwhile, I'm stood there thinking, I've just driven 3 hours to stir at what I could have seen at Bent's Garden Centre. But at least, you know, they're throwing a free brew. Now, inside the rainforest biome, that they're called, it was about 45 degrees Celsius. I mean, I'm from Wigan / Goulburn. I mean, my body shuts down at anything above tepid. I mean, by the time we got to the top viewing platform, I was clinging to the railings like I just, you know, climbed Everest. Tracy's there, all smiles, taking selfies. Beat me to it. I'm bright red, shirt stuck to me, praying for frostbite. Of course, we bumped into Gwen, because Gwen's everywhere. Turns out she volunteers as a plant interpreter, whatever that is. She sidled up to me in front of some enormous banana tree and whispered, "This one talks, if you listen close enough." I said, "Gwen, if that plant starts speaking, it'll be ordering me a Cornish pasty and a taxi. I'll be going home." Then there's the Mediterranean biome. Sounds lovely, right? A nice breeze, bit of olive oil, a whiff of lavender. Wrong. It's just like being trapped in your auntie's conservatory after she's overdone the Glade plugins. Colin the farmer popped up out of nowhere and proudly announced that half the plants weren't even Cornish. "Did you know," he boomed, pointing at a lemon tree, "that this isn't local?" "Yes, Colin. That's why it's called the Mediterranean biome. It's not exactly a shocker." Lunch was another adventure. I mean, they've got this fancy cafe where everything's organic, you know, sustainable, fair trade, you know, all the buzzwords. So I ordered what I thought was a steak pasty. Turned out it was plant-based. Now, I bit into it, and honestly, it tasted like sadness wrapped in a pasty. Tracy loved hers, of course. It's good for the planet, Paul. Yeah, love, but what about my taste buds? They're dying a slow vegan death. Oh, and there's a gift shop. Oh, there's a gift shop. Now, you can't escape without being funneled through it like livestock at an abattoir. Row after row of like ethically sourced tat. Bamboo socks, recycled pencils, a mug that says Eden is heaven. So I asked Tracy if we really needed a £15 calendar of ferns. She gave me the look, so we now own the fern calendar. But the real highlight was when Lionel, our choir conductor, appeared, striding through the biome like he was leading the London Philharmonic. Apparently he was drawing inspiration from the flora of our Christmas repertoire. Honestly, the man was waving his arms at a cactus, conducting it like it was an orchestra. I was half hoping it would prick him, just to bring him back down to earth. By the end of the day, Tracy was glowing, said it was the best outing we've had since we moved to Cornwall. And me, well, I just staggered back to the car like I'd gone 3 rounds in a sauna. And the thing was, we got home, opened the fridge, and what was stirring back at me? A perfectly good punnet of cherry tomatoes from Tesco. £2, no dome required. So the Eden Project, folks, beautiful, yes. Impressive, of course. Worth the money? Well, only if you enjoy sweating through your trousers and paying £8 for a wrap that tastes like lawn clippings. So after the sweating my body weight out of the Eden Project, I decided I need some fresh air. I mean proper fresh air. Just me. The open fields and the soothing sounds of nature. No Gwen, no Clive rhyming, no Lionel waving at cactuses. Just Paul, a lone wanderer. A Cornish rambler, if you will. And I'll be honest, for the first 10 minutes, it was idyllic. Rolling hills, birds singing, sheep dotted across the fields like fluffy clouds. I even thought to myself, this is it. This is why people move to Cornwall. The peace, the quiet, the sense of belonging to the land. But then I realised 2 things. One, that my boots weren't actually waterproof, and 2, I was lost. I mean, not charmingly lost, like in a romantic comedy where you stumble into a vineyard and meet someone gorgeous. No, I was knee-deep in a bog, trousers soaked, trying to work out if the path I was on was a public footpath or just like a cow track. Spoiler, it was a cow track, and the cows were home. Now, I don't mind cows. I've said this before, they're fine from a distance. But when there's a herd of them stirring at you like you've wandered into the lounge with muddy boots on, it's a bit intimidating. So I tried the calm approach. All right, ladies, just passing through. One of them snorted and took a step closer. I've seen enough wildlife documentaries to know that's the cow version of squaring up. So I legged it, slipped straight into another bog, came up looking like I'd been dragged backwards through Glastonbury. So much for the peace and quiet. Finally, I reached what I thought was civilization. A site leading into another field, except the stile was about 4 feet high. And with wet trousers and zero dignity, I nearly went headfirst into a hedge trying to climb it. By this point, the birds weren't singing, they were laughing. And then, just when I thought I was free, who do I bump into on the country lane? Bloody Gwen, carrying 2 Tesco bags and a loot that said, "I knew you'd get lost, Paul." I mean, she didn't even ask where it happened. She just handed me a packet of wet wipes from her bag and said, "Clean yourself up before Tracy sees you. You'll ruin her fur colander with all that muck." So peace and tranquility. Maybe for 10 minutes. After that, it was more like a rural assault course. But you know what? In a strange way, it felt very Cornish. A bit beautiful, a bit muddy, slightly terrifying, and always with someone like Gwen waiting to catch you out. So, folks, another week in Cornwall draws to a close. The Beanstalk has collapsed. The panto is cancelled. The choir has almost ruined my voice permanently. Oh, and the Eden Project nearly killed me with heat and kale-based snacks, and my peaceful country walk ended with me soaked, mud-caked, and eyeball to eyeball with a herd of judgmental cows. Tracy said it's all character building. I say it's character shredding. Gwen is still everywhere. Clive is rhyming under his breath every time I see him, and I'm just hoping that next week involves less hair, fewer high notes, and maybe a nap. Until then, remember, Cornwall is beautiful, tranquil, and quietly plotting your demise. So, until next week, look after yourselves, take care, I shall see you next week. Ta-ra now.